Wow, what a joyous experience. If you're like me, you love roguelikes. You may also love third-person shooters, Roboquest, Gunfire Reborn, Hello Kitty Birthday Adventures. Well, then you'll probably be super interested in Terminull Brigade, third-person shooter action roguelike, yeah! Jump into the Nullverse and battle various enemies while collecting perks and steadily improving your Rogueteers. Rogueteers? Rogueteers? I don't know, as you unlock upgrades and various other things that contribute to their beefiness. So take a seat with me as we dive into the surprisingly enjoyable world of Terminull Brigade. Hello, my supple gaming friends. Jarek Defiler, the not-so-patient gamer here with the completely out-of-left-field Terminull Brigade. I had never heard of this game until March 29th. I just randomly found out about it and went to check it out on Steam just to discover that they were holding an open beta over that weekend. So I signed up and was able to get in rather quickly and spend a little over 6 hours on the game between that Saturday and Sunday evening before the beta was closed. So full disclosure, this video is very much a first impressions based on the short time I had in the beta, so who knows what the game may be like upon full release. I also didn't play co-op as I didn't have time, so this is all based on solo runs. Just keep that in mind moving forward. Okay? Okay! Developed by Chinese studio Pew Pew Games and published by Tencent-owned Level Infinite, who don't appear to have the best track record to be honest, Terminull Brigade is an action roguelite in the form of a third-person shooter. The closest I can compare it to based on personal experience is that of Roboquest, which I rather enjoy. Like Roboquest, you have a few set characters with their own playstyles and skills. It's sort of a hero shooter in a way. You proceed throughout each given run battling enemies in small arena-type fields of play, where you have to defeat all enemies or complete the event before moving on to the next arena. Simple. As you trudge along, you will be granted temporary perks and relics that will stay with you on that given run. These are the bread and butter of the gameplay loop, as you will customize your character's playstyle greatly depending on how you build, just like your standard roguelike fashion. These perks will be granted to you by various entities known as arbiters that have their own themes, much like the gods in the fantastic Hades for those familiar. For instance, you have Dawis, the Arbiter of Wealth, whose perks involve generating coins that you then use to purchase relics and upgrades during each run. Or you have Oasis, seriously, what is up with these names? The Arbiter of Music, who specializes in this repulse ability that knocks enemies back and can be tweaked in a variety of ways. In the beta, there were a total of 8 arbiters that really allowed for some pretty great customization, so that was a huge positive. Lots and lots of build options here. And the best part is that they're fairly unique. One big criticism I had with Roboquest is that the perk system was a bit lackluster in that everything was mostly percentage increases. There were some variety in how perks would adjust your skills and whatnot, but overall there was a lot of boring stuff like 30% increased fire damage or 3% increased movement speed, stuff like that. In Terminull Brigade, there are percentage stat increase perks, but ultimately I found the perk system to be a bit more engaging than that of Roboquest. Most of the perks would have some pretty cool skill or weapon altering effects that can really mix up your gameplay loop. For instance, on my Blade playthrough, I started investing into the Arbiter of Thunder with the lightning attack perk that would grant chain lightning upon every 4th weapon attack. With an automatic weapon, this becomes fairly devastating as it procs quite a bit. So I was able to just dump all this AoE lightning damage with just one sexy little perk. And that's not to mention the other enhancements you can get on top of that. Really fun and really cool. Almost as cool as liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Woo! Sharing it helps out nicely as well. Help a brother out, you know what I'm saying? Wah. But now on top of perks, you also have relics. I have to be honest, it took me a little while to understand the relic system as they're based on sets. You get 8 relic slots per character with 6 items completing a set. So generally you want 6 items for one set and then 2 items of another set that will grant the 2 set item bonus for that. Some relics can also be a part of multiple sets. For example, the Divine Blade set is a close range weapon set that boosts weapon damage within 8 meters. You can only combine it with other Divine Blades. But then you have the Data Amplifier, which can be combined with either other amplifiers for a skill damage and ultimate charge efficiency set bonus, or you can combine it with the Battery set for just skill damage bonus. So even some of the relics have some customizable options, albeit not as much as perks. Sweet. Now all these relics are purchased in the item shop after completing each arena, and the perks are granted to you at each arena end as well, but you don't have to purchase those. You simply get a random selection of 1 out of 3 perks. So in summary, as you defeat enemies, you gain coins, which you then spend on relics, healing, or health upgrades in the item shop, whereas perks you get for free after each arena completion. But there are some opportunities to purchase perks in the item shop as well when you refresh. Just cost a little bit of coin, you know? Okay, let's talk about the various characters. During the beta, you had access to 6. Blade, Aurora, Hanks, I have no idea, Max, Gloria, and Colonel. As stated before, each has their own unique playstyle and abilities. Blade mainly uses what appears to be an automatic pistol as her main weapon or an SMG, while her skills revolve around her sword. Aurora uses this like energy attack as her weapon that ramps up a debuff that then explodes if I recall. She also had the ability to fly around the map attacking from above, which is pretty fun. Hankies uses again what appears to be dual automatic pistols or SMGs and the ability to lock onto enemies. He works fairly well in close range I found, and I think he was probably my favorite to play to be honest. Max, my least favorite character, is somewhat a wannabe Junkrat from Overwatch that uses abilities at the cost of health, while having a weapon that shoots these extremely slow moving saw blades. Gloria is your engineer. She builds little robots that act as turrets and buff sims. Her main attack is rather slow and weak as a result. Lastly, you got Colonel, the Soldier 76 of the group. He seems a bit generic upon first glance, but he's actually rather fun and has some pretty interesting build options. I have to say that out of all the characters, Max was the only one I didn't enjoy in the slightest. I only played one partial playthrough with him and never went back because it just wasn't fun for me. His playstyle feels very clunky and his weapon damage was almost non-existent. Sure, you can invest in perks to beef up his weapons, I'm sure, but it just didn't feel good to me by default. As such, I had zero desire to play him again. But each to their own here, no doubt others may enjoy him a great deal, just not this stallion. But as far as the other characters go, I enjoyed the shit out of them. Each one was fun and unique and offered very different playstyles that kept me engaged and wanting to play more. They did a great job in that regard in my awesomely humble opinion. Now, when I first found this game and saw the trailer that showed no gameplay and the screenshots that all looked very generic and kind of cheap, I was skeptical. This looked like just another cash grab game with flashy graphics and production values, but little to no substance. We've all seen them, we know which ones we're talking about. I can happily say that I was wrong there. The gameplay loop is very good in Terminull Brigade. The combat had me wanting to play more and more. It was fluid, weighty in a good way, and responsive. The enemy variety is very well done. There's lots of unique baddies to fight, and they don't really get old. Overall, the combat was great. I don't really have any qualms about it whatsoever, to be honest. In these sorts of games, the combat must be competent, and pew pew games achieved competency here, I feel. But again, this was just a short beta, so who knows what the final product may be like. Caveat emptor. As far as the meta progression goes, it looks like there's quite a bit to invest in here. You get these modules that you can dismantle and use to upgrade other modules. Each character will have their own set slots that you then have to Tetris the modules into, allowing for various stat increases based on what types of runs you want to do. You can remove and assign these at will with no issues. You have ability modules as well, that is basically your talent tree for your profile. These will affect all characters across the board. Things like health and shield increase, damage increase, or the tree I mainly invested in. Coin adjustments, allowing for more money to buy more stuff, yeah. You also have your standard character skins, ability to unlock various weapons and currencies and whatnot, which brings me to the monetization scheme. I have no idea what they're going to do with it. I think it will be free to play, but not sure. As I said, I just found out about this game and didn't really have any time to do any research, so there were locked skins, and I'm assuming that there'll be one aspect to bring cash in. However, the skins were fairly lackluster in my opinion, mostly just color changes, and I'm not sure if they will be locking characters behind a paywall, so like you might only be able to play, say, Colonel unless you pay to unlock the others. No idea. So maybe you can play to unlock them, but it would be faster to just pay kind of thing. I have no idea again, and there was so much information in the game being thrown at you at once that it was difficult to decipher as I was mainly focusing on the gameplay and what little time I had to actually, play. I will say that there were various resources, currencies, and stuff like that, so who knows how that's all going to go down. I'm skeptical by nature when it comes to this type of games monetization, so be sure to do your due diligence if you're thinking of dipping into Terminull Brigade. One final point before diving into my criticisms, the game's performance. I have to say that I was rather impressed here. I was getting an average of 120 to 144 frames per second on any given run, with the lower drops being around 90 frames per second. The only times I would get frame stuttering and massive drops down to the teens were very specific moments during boss fights where there would be a giant explosion or some transition or the loot explosion after the boss dies. But for the most part, the game ran exceptionally well. Far better than Marvel Rivals, that's for sure. And it was a pleasant surprise given the hefty amount of particles and graphical craziness that goes on during battles, because it's really a good looking game and the art style is really nice and there's a lot of really cool graphical fidelity. So really great job here performance wise, and keep in mind my hardware is a little bit outdated at this point. Now let's talk a bit about my criticisms thus far. For starters, the RNG can be a bit wonky when it comes to relics and perks. There were some runs where I just would not get any relics that I could combine into a set. The RNG gods piss on me sometimes, what can I say? I would get like 2 relics of different categories and then another 2 for 2 other different categories, and so on and so forth. This is also after refreshing the store a couple of times. So there were a lot of runs where I just couldn't build a set at all because I was just never given the opportunity. Same can be said for perks sometimes. Often you may get perk options that will just not benefit your character or build in that given run in the slightest. I understand this is just the nature of these types of roguelikes, but sometimes it did feel just a wee bit oppressive. Granted, the times this happened were few and far between, so not really a big deal in the long run. As I said before, Max just doesn't feel good to play for me. This may no doubt be a subjectivity issue where it's a me problem and not one of the games, but I found it weird that I loved every single character except him. He just didn't feel very well designed in my opinion. But again, subjective, meaning my opinion is 100% unadulterated truth. Me. Some of the bosses balancing feel a bit off. For instance, you actually fight some of the characters as bosses, such as Blade and Max, and they're just leagues more difficult than the other standard bosses. Not unbeatable, not overpowered, but very different difficulty-wise. This ties into my next criticism. There is no field of view slider. This can be a big problem for those who may suffer from motion sickness, but it's also a problem in general because you tend to be fairly zoomed in on your character. So when it comes to boss fights, this is very much a detriment because there will be times when the boss will be high in the air, so you have to be looking up, but there will be warning markers on the ground where things like mines or incoming bombs or something may be manifesting. But you can't see them because you're looking up at the boss and your field of view is so zoomed in you can't see the ground. As such, chaos ensues. Although the combat is fluid and very well done as far as I can tell, the actual movement of the characters is a bit wonky. They're kind of floaty and the jumping isn't the best. It's not a detriment, I would say, but just a little janky. Although I do like the maps and the diversity of the map layouts and the different runs you do and the different campaigns, I guess you can call them. In the beta, you have the Ring City and the Wasteland, and as you defeat each one, you can increase the difficulty, and as you defeat that difficulty, you can increase it more, allowing for more challenges and rewards and risks at the same time. There is an issue of each map arena being somewhat small. You burn through them pretty quick, and you don't really have much room to maneuver and move around a lot, so it can be a little bit annoying and kind of claustrophobic at times. But, not really a deal breaker. This is just kind of the way the game is structured. I think it's all intentional. So that's probably just another subjectivity issue, but it would be nice to have some bigger map arenas. As mentioned before, I'm a bit skeptical of the monetization that they'll be using. Not sure what they might be doing, but given all the currency and resource management in the game, it looks somewhat concerning. There are also a few cases of translation issues. The subtitles of the cutscenes don't match up with the narration, for example. And there were a few instances of Chinese characters in the text of the UI. Not really game breaking, and I'm sure it's something they can fix easily though. Lastly, this isn't a criticism I suppose, but just some confusion on my part being a stinky old man gamer and whatnot. I don't get the multiple health bar thingy they do with the bosses. This is very much a Chinese and Korean style thing we see in a lot of their mobile games, but I don't get it. This is also very much me just being ignorant, so maybe someone in the comments can explain this to me as if I were a child, because I don't get why they do it, and it kind of annoys me that I have to destroy multiple health bars. Okay, that pretty much covers my first impressions. Overall, Terminull Brigade was a ton of fun. It didn't feel like some cheap cash grab, but rather something with depth that the developers put some hard work into and actually cared about being good. I really enjoyed my time with it and am looking forward to its full release. If the beta is anything properly representative of the final product, I have no issue sidelining my patient gamer code buying it on, or at least quickly, after release. The combat is engaging and fun, the characters are unique and well designed, and the performance was stellar with the exception of some hiccups on certain boss fights. So give it a look if it's up your alley. Thanks for watching this quick first impressions. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you'd be so kind, and please tell me in the comments what the deal is with bosses having 1,000,000 health bars. This has been Jarek Defiler. You all have a good morning, afternoon, evening, or night depending on where you are, and go wreak havoc in the Nullverse, whatever that is.